WWE doesn't care what the fans think is a statement that I hear all the time, usually in the 24-hour period after Raw when Roman Reigns does something to piss everybody off. Then Twitter explodes trying to figure out what's going on, and the conclusion is always Vince McMahon clearly has no feelings towards his audience. Now, on the one hand, maybe that's true. He's been booking the world's biggest wrestling promotion for years now, and in his head, he probably thinks he knows best, and maybe he does. Maybe if he listened to all the catcalling and the shouts and the rabble-raising, WWE as we know it would plummet through the floor and cease to be. Why did we say anything, is the feeling we get after we realized we'd screwed up World Wrestling Entertainment. Maybe it's not true, and if McMahon's ear was a little bit more open to hearing suggestions, maybe WWE would rise up from the ashes and fly like an eagle soaring through the sky. There's no sky over there, it's a wall. It's a debate that we can have forever, but there is one thing that does seem a lot clearer in 2018, and that is it doesn't really matter who you boo or who you cheer anymore. And in that sense, no, WWE doesn't care what you think. Why? Shave. Here's why. You don't shave with a hand. I was just doing this and I felt my beard and I thought, oh, it wouldn't be funny to say shave. Maybe I'll introduce that. Shave. Sometimes I wonder what I've become. Ever since John Cena became an anomaly of pro wrestling, things have been weird. Despite all the boos and despite all the jeering from some of the fans, and a very large portion of those fans, WWE heard that, but they decided they weren't going to listen because the statistics behind the scenes told a very different story. He was selling merchandise, attendance would go up whenever he was advertised for a card, and really when you think about the mid to late noughties, if John Cena wasn't around, WWE would have been a lot, and I mean a lot, worse of a place. If anything, could have tanked. This evolved even more when Bryan came along and changed the game once again. Despite the WWE's insistence that they would not push him, eventually the cheers got so loud they had absolutely no choice. He was beaten down again and again until literally nobody could do it anymore, because that would have probably incensed a riot, and we got all those lovely scenes at WrestleMania 30. And they really are lovely scenes. Go back and watch them. If you ever hate wrestling, go and watch the ending of WrestleMania 30 and it'll make your heart go, ah. And that's your heart singing. And it's good when your heart sings, feels nice. And never forget that despite what anybody says, this was never the plan that WWE was originally going for. Hence why at one point, Bryan joined the Wyatt clan for about 67 seconds. You don't do that if eventually he's going to win the championship at the biggest show of them all. And then there's Roman Reigns, and that's where this story takes another dramatic shift. I get a lot of people are sick of hearing about it, but he is the most interesting thing about pro wrestling at the moment because he just doesn't make any sense. And I did a video about that too. The whole show is written around him no matter what, to the point we even turned Braun Strowman heel, and Braun Strowman was organically, and I hate that word, but I've said it anyway, getting over with the fans. People wanted to cheer for the monster among men. That's not what WWE wanted. Roman Reigns is the project, Roman Reigns is number one, Roman Reigns is the man, to hell with everybody else. And besides, the Universal Champion needed an opponent at Hell in a Cell 2018, so we did what we had to do. Rightly, a lot of fans started to ask whether WWE actually even cared what was happening on television, because despite a vocal backlash, Vince McMahon was going to storm on through regardless. That's why we had Roman Reigns headline the last 4 WrestleManias. Count them, 1, 2, 3, 4. Whatever needed to be done would be done. Here's the thing. Whether it be Roman, Becky Lynch as of late, or Zack Ryder back in the day, WWE doesn't believe they need to veer off course regardless whether anyone's being cheered or whether they're being booed. If they have a set plan, they will do every single thing possible to rewrite that narrative, so then it just becomes the norm. Here's the twist. Here's the little surprise, here's the drama. That ain't nothing new. While in 2018 we like to claim that the company has changed and it's not what we used to be, there is plenty of evidence to show that that isn't the case at all. Look at somebody like Lex Luger. Do you remember Lex Luger? After Hulk Hogan had walked away from the then WWF, Luger was picked as basically the guy to become the new Hulkster, almost literally. He went face for no reason, had a bus take him around the United States of America as he shook hands and kissed babies, and he even body slammed Yokozuna on a yacht. This was meant to be big, this was meant to be clever, this was meant to be monstrous, and it failed. Fans didn't want Lex to be that guy, probably because he'd spent most of the time in that promotion flexing and admiring his own reflection in the mirror. Or perhaps the audience was just so wise to what this was and they didn't want anybody being shoved down their throats. Instead, the crowd picked Bret Hart as his successor, but it wasn't like this just happened overnight. It wasn't just a poof and everything had switched around. It was more like the Daniel Bryan situation, which was a long old slog before somebody backstage eventually went, oh, just do it for goodness sake. Then there's Stone Cold Steve Austin, because even during his rise, people were trying to pop that bubble. If you ever listened to Stone Cold's podcast, you will have heard him told the story of when he went to Vince McMahon. He was like, Vince, why do you keep cutting my interviews? Why do you keep cutting my promo time? That's all I've got. If you take away my personality, I cannot compete. Stone Cold had to physically go to McMahon and ask him to stop this, and as he found out at the time, the reason this was being done was because Mr. Austin was popping the boys in the truck, and that means what he was coming out with was good stuff. And let's take Stone Cold Steve Austin in 2018. Could the Stone Cold Steve Austin of the one day even go to Vince McMahon and ask him to stop doing this, or if he did, would he be reprimanded? We've heard and seen it happening before. We can keep throwing names out there as well, such as Kevin Nash, or as he was known during his mega push, Diesel. He held the WWF title for what felt like 173 billion years, and despite the fact business went through the floor during this, McMahon stuck with it because he was adamant that he'd made the right call. Yes, all these things eventually changed, but the key today is money. In 2018, WWE will make more cash than they ever have done. That will increase in 2019, and when we get to 2020, you've guessed it, it goes up higher still. All because of those crazy TV deals they sign that just keeps hurling moolah into their pockets. And that's the problem. It's all good us getting on our high horses and waving our flags, but if all the metrics are favourable to one Vince McMahon, all his shareholders are going to be happy, and they're going to assume he's doing a good job. And that's probably because he is. Every day we hear wrestlers describe pro wrestling as the business, and that's exactly what it is, and therefore revenue is the most important part of that. Why would management listen to some boos if all the graphs continue to increase? And does it even make a difference who we cheer or boo anymore, given how in on the whole thing we are? Know everything. Doesn't mean that anybody should stop, and it doesn't mean you're wrong to do this, but maybe just a little bit it is falling on deaf ears because, hey, maybe the people that do this are in the minority. The vocal upset minority is always louder than those who are content, because if you're content, you don't go and make a big protest. If you did, you'd be really weird. I mean, what is your placard going to say? I'm really happy, stop this now. So yeah, it is an interesting pro wrestling world we live in these days, and there's certainly things that we can critique, but it's also one that made something like All In possible, so it ain't all bad. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you think about all of this. Like, share, and subscribe. Head on over to WhatCulture.com and read yourself some articles, and follow WhatCulture on Twitter at WhatCulture WWE. My name is Simon from WhatCulture. Thank you very much for watching the Why series, and I hope to see your face very soon. You stare into me, I stare into you. We have that connection. We have that feeling. We have that emotion. Bow your head. Stop the video.